This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World, where we're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. Beyond the little Princeton and deluxe reverbs, the Super Reverb is likely the most iconic Fender amp. A favorite of so many great players past and present that when Fender told me that they were reissuing the rare 62 Super Brown amp, I knew that the universe was telling me to double back and make the video of the Super lineage. So if you've always wondered about the origin of these classic noisemakers, you're in the right place, because this is the 5-Watt World short history of the Fender Super amps. If you like this style of video, be sure to hit the subscribe button. YouTube tells me that 65% of the folks watching my videos aren't subscribed, so if you're a regular here, hit the subscribe to be sure to see the new videos. To support what we do, grab a t-shirt, hoodie, or a 5-Watt World Barber Collaboration overdrive pedal. And to become an even bigger part of 5-Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5-Watt on Patreon. There's a friend level to suit any budget. Do it now. All the links are in the description. Launched in 1947, the Dual Professional was a direct ancestor of the Super amps. It was the first amp that Leo Fender produced intended to be used on stage, the first in what would become his Professional series. Running just 2 years until it was redesigned and branded as the Super, it has the distinction of being the world's first twin-speaker guitar amplifier with a pair of 10-inch speakers. The pair of output transformers were mounted directly to the Jensen PM10C Alnico speakers. They were built with a unique V-front cabinet of finger-joined pine, with 2 separate plywood speaker baffles holding those 10-inch speakers. With 2 octal preamp tubes and an octal tube for the phase inverter, it ran into a pair of 6L6 power tubes. Even with the 6L6 tubes, the original Dual Professional would only produce about 18 watts from its cathode bias design. Interestingly, the internals of the amp were identical to the Fender Pro, only the speaker configuration was different. There were 4 inputs, mic and instrument volume controls, and a single tone control. The channels could be jumpered to combine and blend the channels together to find the variety of tones capable from these early amps. These are exceedingly rare amps and are a favorite of Billy Gibbons, and there's no wonder why. He famously used the V-front Dual Professional on ZZ Top's Antenna album from 1994. Check out that record for examples of that incredibly rare tone machine. In 2023, Fender Custom worked with Joe Bonamassa to reproduce a run of Dual Professionals based on Joe's own original 1948 example. Due to limited availability of the original parts, they moved to 9-pin preamp tubes, different transformers, and speakers. But this version, voiced with comparisons to the original, makes a hearty 26 watts, nearly perfect for the volumes possible in clubs or on stage these days. This is more in line with the output of the later 50s variants of the circuit. Very cool of Joe to partner with Fender to bring us this amp. By the fall of '47, Fender had rebranded the Dual Professional as the first Super Amp. And in many ways, it remained the same until 1953. By '52, they'd moved to a single chassis-mounted output transformer. These picks have been of a '52 Super that was previously owned by former Bob Dylan sideman and Saturday Night Live musical director G.E. Smith. The last year of the split front was early in '52, switching to the narrow panel Tweed designs after that would carry until the end of the Tweed era. In '55, the amp was inexplicably switched from 6L6 power tubes down to a pair of 6V6 tubes. Some foible of marketing in the amp line at Fender, no doubt. Bizarrely, the voltages in the circuit weren't adjusted and the amp was making about 25% more voltage than the 6V6 wanted. So by '56, it was once again carrying a pair of 6L6 tubes, making the circuit again nearly identical to the Pro and Bandmaster amps of the era, the differences being in the speaker complement. In that 55 version, the simple treble roll-off tone control gave way to a Baxandall style tone stack with separate treble and bass controls, and there was an added presence control. They moved to using the more modern 12AY7 tubes in the preamp for more clarity and headroom than would have been possible with 12AX7 tubes. It moved from the cathode bias to a fixed bias design, and a choke was added to the filter section. These were about all the changes we'd see in the amp until the end of the Tweed era. My buddy Zach Childs made an excellent video on a narrow panel Super, and he called it the 58 Bassman's little brother. Less wattage, half the speakers, and less overall volume than a Tweed Bassman, making it a better amp for today's playing situations. And gear historian Dave Hunter said in Vintage Guitar that, quote, "In the estimation of many a vintage amp fan, it is among the sweetest and most delectable of any amp ever made." From that magical time at the end of the Tweed era, the Super was redesigned in 1960 along with the rest of the Fender's Professional Series amps, those specifically designed and marketed for use on stage by professional musicians. The Super was the lowest price model in the Pro line. They clad the new amp in light brown Tolex and added an oxblade grill cloth and the new forward-facing control panel. Unlike the other models in the Professional Series, the Super retained its tube rectifier, giving it a sound more related to the previous Tweed models. The new vibrato took the preamp section up to 5 tubes, and by the end of the year, it actually changed up to 6 tubes with changes to the vibrato circuit. The preamp came loaded with 7025 power tubes, a military-spec low-noise 12AX7 running into a pair of 6L6 power tubes and using a GZ34 rectifier. There were 2 independent channels, each with treble and bass controls. The vibrato channel also had speed and intensity, and the presence control was still there to tame both channels. The early 60s amp delivered about 40 watts from its pair of 6L6 power tubes. A pair of either Jensen or Oxford Alnico 10-inch speakers were used. I've been using TrueFire for years, so they were the perfect partner for 5-Watt World. Like a lot of guitar players, I'm interested in all kinds of music, and TrueFire always has something to scratch the itch I have for learning more about guitar. To take full advantage of the variety, I've always subscribed to the All Access Pass, which lets me use everything in the TrueFire catalog. I've learned so much from TrueFire that I'm confident you can too. As a viewer of 5-Watt World, you can get an exclusive 50% discount on the All Access Pass. Sign up using the link in the video description to support 5-Watt World and get some great lessons at the same time. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this video. The brown panel years were marked by rapid changes to the circuit. The amps were evolving quickly, and certain years are truly unique. So it was particularly interesting to me when Fender decided to release a reissue of the 62 Super Amp, 2 6L6 power tubes and 6 12AX7 preamp tubes running into a pair of 10-inch Celestion custom design speakers. I've had one now for about a month, and it captures the classic brown panel era tone that straddles the Tweed and black panel eras. It has warm and woody clean tones that will roll up into more mid-forward overdrive than a black panel deluxe reverb. It even has the famous phase-shifting harmonic tremolo that we're seeing pop up in the best tremolo pedals these days. It's built with a solid pine cabinet like the originals and is assembled by Fender in California. I'm a self-professed tremolo addict, having gone so far as having built my own late 50s Gibson GA40 with its dynamic bias-based tremolo. I've had Fender's recent Chris Stapleton Princeton models and a Sir Ombre amp over the last couple of years, but I had never experienced firsthand the harmonic tremolo that has this slight phase-shifting type of modulation. Let's face it, this is what they are all chasing with their DSP power and digital pedals. But there really is nothing like an amp in the room. This was illustrated so very ably by Joey Landreth on an episode on harmonic tremolo on That Pedal Show, 8 years ago now, playing a 62 Super Amp they'd borrow from the folks at Origin Effects. Likely the best known player of the Brown Super Amps is Big Al Anderson from the band NRBQ. Again, Zach has made a great video on this important player, with much discussion of Big Al playing a Telecaster through a classic brown Super in the late 80s. Early in '63, Fender launched their first reverb-equipped amp in the Vibroverb, an amp that was essentially a Super with reverb added, right down to its two 10-inch speakers. Then late in '63, Fender released the Black Panel Super Reverb, loaded with not two, but four 10-inch speakers. Like all the amps of the Black Panel era, it had the classic black Tolex, black control plate, and silver grill cloth that now says Classic Fender to all of us. When the Vibroverb moved to the black Tolex in '65, they switched it to a 15-inch speaker, but this model was short-lived and has now been overshadowed by the classic and long-running Super Reverb. Fender literature at the time even spoke of the new Super Reverbs having closer ties to the brown concert amps of the early 60s and the 4x10 Tweed basements of the late 50s. The Super Reverb amps have been used by rock and blues players in particular because players preferred the gutsier sound of pushing a pair of 6L6s to the super clean sound of the twin reverb. With four 10-inch speakers, it has a nice firm bass response, and to accommodate the four speakers, they created a new 24x24x10.5-inch cabinet. The new black panel circuitry, with its increased negative feedback and new tone stack, put out enough trouble to cut through any situation. The Super Reverb is very different than the brown Super that preceded it. Gone was the harmonic tremolo, replaced by a tube oscillating tremolo running from the black panel's photoresistor network. The presence control was removed, but the amp had a switchable bright cap on each channel, and a middle control was added to the tone stack of the vibrato channel. Of course, the model-defining feature was the addition of reverb. Launched just after the new Twin Reverb and Deluxe Reverb amps, the new Super Reverb just missed being announced with those amps at their launch in the '63-'64 full-line catalog. The amp ran in this form until '68 when Fender moved to the silver control panel with blue trim look. Of course, the '68 had the famous drip edge trim along the grill cloth that was gone by the next year. Cabinet dimensions were tweaked slightly in these transition years along with the specific placement of speakers in the cabinet. Most of the small circuit changes made in the Silverface years can be undone to bring the amps back to the nearly universally preferred black panel specs. In a nod to the weight of the amp, by '72, Fender would add casters to the bottom of the amp at no extra cost. Famous players of classic Super Reverbs include B.B. King, Derek Trucks, Matt Schofield, Mike Bloomfield, Alex Lifeson, Tom Verlaine of Television, and of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Check out SRV's Live at El Macumbo for a full lesson in Stratocasters and Super Reverbs. The Super Reverb held off the trend to add a master volume until the mid-'70s, and the power was boosted to 70 watts. Otherwise, the amps remained very much the same until 1980, when the black panel was first offered as an option again, and then became standard the next year. A middle control was added to the tone stack in the normal channel. Then in '82, the Super Reverb was phased out of production, replaced by a 410 concert model in the '82 2-series amps. As a side note, the Fender Super 6 was not a super amp so much as a twin reverb in a monster cabinet carrying 6 10-inch speakers, but Fender often reused names, to the confusion of us all. After the sale of Fender by CBS in 1985, the new company revived the Super name in the Super 60, a 60-watt amp with one 12-inch speaker and no tremolo. The controls were the same as the twin. A Super 112 and a Super 210 joined the Super 60 in 1990 and were replaced with an all-retro tube version 4x10 Super in '93. And just like the early days of the Super, the internals of the mid-'90s Super and concert amps are the same, varying only in their speaker complement. And in 2001, Fender released the venerable '65 Super Reverb Reissue, a faithful black panel-looking PCB-based recreation of the mid-'60s Super Reverb. The control panel can pass for an original '65, with its pair of bright switches, middle control on the vibrato channel only, spring reverb, and vibrato completing the reissue. Also, like its 65 ancestor, it produces a very similar 45 watts from its pair of 6L6 power tubes feeding 4 10-inch Jensen P10R speakers. These are not small amps, and I had to chuckle to myself when I realized that Fender doesn't list the average weight of the amp on their website. I had to go to Sweetwater for that. It's a full 65 pounds, so pay to install this set of casters that Fender was willing to install for free in the early 70s. And most recently, in August 2021, Fender released a modeling amp version of the venerable Super Reverb in their Tonemaster series. Mimicking all the cosmetic features of the original 65 Super Reverb, it uses a digital model of the tube amp paired to a solid-state power section. My buddy Rhett Shull did a great A/B of a vintage 66 Super Reverb up against the Tonemaster version, and he's let me share those clips of the two amps here in the video. Brett's conclusion was that no, the Tonemaster does not sound like a vintage Super Reverb, but it is a good sounding amp that only weighs 36 pounds, just over half what the 65 Reissue weighs. Depending on the strength of your back, you can make your own choices. It's always been fascinating to me that our amps are the only part of our signal chain that makes sound, and yet I find that players are often more connected to their choice of guitar than their choice of amp. But the more you play gigs and record, I think most guitarists begin to see this differently. Look at your guitar heroes and the loyalty that they develop for their favorite amps. Then it's easy to understand that the amp is a living, breathing part of the electric guitar equation, and you go down the amp rabbit hole right and proper, in just the same way you did with your favorite guitar. If you enjoyed this video, you'd probably enjoy my video on the history of the Fender Deluxe Reverb. So who's your favorite Super or Super Reverb artist? Put it in the comments for everyone to enjoy. I need to thank John Cordy and Rhett Shull for their permission to use the clips of their great playing on some great Super amps. I need to thank Mick Taylor from That Pedal Show for sharing the clip of Joey Landreth playing that 62 Super amp with the harmonic tremolo. I want to thank everyone that stopped by the online store and grabbed some merch or a 5 Watt World Barber Collaboration overdrive. You keep the channel going. In particular, I need to thank my friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. It's the guitar community I've always wanted. You're all 5 Watt World. I just make the videos. If you like this style of video, be sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Thanks for hanging with me until the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt World.